You're listening to Good Because Danish interview with MoonBee. In January, Gry Colding, who is making music under the moniker MoonBee, released her double EP Come Move in Another Dimension, where she presents 6 songs in 2 different arrangements. We had a very honest and real conversation with her about the duality of things, advantages and struggles of a DIY artist, and the music industry.
My name is Gry Colding. I'm a Danish artist who work under the name MoonBee. It's an galaxy pop project where I try to use myself as an artist in as many ways as possible, where I work as, of course, a musician, but also very much on the visual side in doing scenography, costumes, editing my own photos, and so on.
So you're like a one-person company, basically.
Yeah, I am. I have a booger, but everything on the art side is on me, yeah.
You just released your debut EP under the name MoonBee. Can you tell me a little bit more about the concept behind this EP, because it's not like any other release?
I wanted to make an EP where you could hear 2 sides of the same song, because it would give the listener the possibility to enter my universe in different ways. And that's why I created Come Move in Another Dimension in these 2 different EPs that are the same 6 songs that you can listen to in 2 different ways. On part 1, you can hear me with my band, The Astronauts, whom I mostly play with. And they're a selection of really good friends that I've developed this part 1 with. And we've been working on it for years. And on part 2, you can hear the same 6 songs in string arrangements that I did. And then I worked with Who Killed Bambi, a string band here from Aarhus, where I live. We went to the studio together and they gave me a lot of feedback on my arrangements and recorded all 6 in one day. It was a very intense, long day. But yeah, the compositions on that one is my work.
And what is the message behind this set of songs? Because there is a sort of a theme going through from one to the other.
I think I work a lot with dualities in most of the things that I do. I like the thought of organic against machine, and we've been working a lot of with a lot of synthesizers on part 1, and then taking it over in this woody string arrangement where you can hear the organic development and the wood in the strings. I really like that duality. And then it's songs that makes you wonder about what life is and the friends you really appreciate. Almost every song stems from a conversation I had with a really good friend.
There is a feeling of intimacy also on this EP. I think that's might have something to do with your vocals as well. Did you have a training or went to music school, or how did you start your adventure with professional music?
I'm educated as a singer from the Royal Academy of Music. I have a bachelor degree in that, and then I have a master degree as a songwriter. I've spent years refining my expression. For me, it landed when I started to dive into my songwriting more in my master's degree. I felt like I could let go of some of that perfect vocal training that I've had for years and use it as an advantage, but also sometimes forget it, because sometimes you need the imperfections to let you in. And that's a very important thing for me, is that there's room for reflection. And I think if everything is too polished, you're not invited in as a listener. So I've actually spent a long time to find some kind of intimacy, as you described it. I'm really glad you hear that in my music, because it's really important for me that you as a listener feel very invited into my universe.
And you mentioned before that you record and play with a band, which is also quite unique for the artist, because all your songs are labeled MoonBee and the Astronauts. Can you tell a bit more about this relation? Because usually when an artist, a solo artist, releases music, there's that highlighted mention of people involved into recording it and playing together with the artist.
The band is so important for me. It's some of my really good friends, and it's artists that I really trust, and they have such a big say in my music. I wouldn't have invited them in if I didn't want to hear their opinion. And I've really grown a lot as a musician by sparring with them and talking about the aesthetics and where we wanted the music to go. So it became this trip we all wanted to go on together. And they've been such an important part of my career, both as a solo artist, but as a musician in general. And that's why I think it's so important for me to mention them. I couldn't have done the part one at all without them. I hear them in all the decisions we made together. And they're really a unique bundle of very precious people.
You also mentioned in our takeover on Instagram that you did, and people still can see it in our highlighted section on Instagram, about your designing for MoonBee project, and that you also have experience in that, and you have these beautiful visuals. Can you tell me a bit more about how you created the project MoonBee, because it is a very well thought out project from the visual side?
I created MoonBee because I really needed to set myself creatively free. I needed to have a space where I was not limited in any kind of way in my creativity. And since most of my life I thought I wanted to be a designer, working with mostly fabrics, but also furniture and decorating. I think it was such a natural process for me to take all that knowledge that I had from that area and put it into this project. Somehow I think it started giving into this kind of synergy where when I don't feel inspired as a musician, I could feel inspired as an art director or as a designer. And so there's always this like flowing energy in the project. So sometimes I actually write songs just to match a visual idea that I wanted to have on a stage. And I think it's nice that it can be, the music that inspires the universe, and it is most of the time, but sometimes it's also the other way around, where I really want this spaceship scenography. For instance, we've been building some spaceship scenography, me and my dad. And so how would that sound, a spaceship, and then starting to dive into that. So there's been like this synergy of like wobbling between the visual and the musical part.
It's a little bit like you said, the two sides of one coin in a way, because it all in the end comes together.
Exactly, yeah.
And you also have this very warm feeling in your music. Do you think that that comes a little bit also from the freedom of being a do-it-yourself artist?
Freedom is so important for me. If I ever have to sign with a label, they have to think the fact that I want to do all these things is a strength, not a weakness. And as it is right now, I'm really satisfied with my situation as a DIY artist who has a booker. It suits me very well to be my own boss. I always knew I wanted to be my own boss in some way. And I feel like, there's a lot of freedom. And also I think the warmth stems from a really good atmosphere with the people I work with. It's always such a pleasure to meet up in a rehearsal room. We never fight over anything, and most of the time we have a really good time being together. And when I listen to the recordings, I hear the good memories, and I hope that's also what is reflected in some kind of way.
But what are struggles, because there must be some as a DIY artist?
I really try to focus it in periods of my life, because if it's always very organizational, it's really hard on you. So for instance, this week and the last one, it's been all about the release and PR, and I've teamed up with some management that helps me with it, but also just like worrying about what people think of it. I've never thought of it before this week, what people might actually think about it. So this worry also just comes up sometimes, and it's a big struggle for me, worrying if people might actually like it or not. And then of course there's the struggle right now of Corona. I've canceled so many things I dreamt about this year. Almost everything on my bucket list as a musician has been erased, and it's I cried a lot this year, and I think a lot of musicians did. I'm not solo on this one, and especially people who have a little bit of momentum right now. So I think that's really tough at the moment. I'm just I'm trying to create new things for the new album and focusing on creating because that's the only thing I can do at the moment. And then in general, in the music business, being a very small artist, it's super hard to make money, actually. I work on the side as a singing and songwriting teacher. Of course, there's also an element of I can only do this for a few years before it becomes a burnout. So I'm trying to take care of myself meanwhile and give myself time, because when you don't have money, you need to be more flexible on your time schedules.
But also, I think on the other hand, maybe is there a part of you that thinks that not having bosses over you, as you said, you're your own boss, makes it a little bit easier to deal with the pressure? Or like you are the one that creates pressure and you are the one who says where are your limits with the project.
Actually, that's one of the things I'm really rehearsing on as a human being. I'm really hard on myself, and I'm trying not to be, because I actually think I'm a lot worse boss for me than anybody else would be. I have a lot of dreams I want to be able to manifest, and sometimes it's a lot harder process than you might think it would be. Actually, it is most of the time. I'm super optimistic every time I enter a new project. So actually, that's one of the things I'm trying to learn, is to be milder on myself and stretch things more than I want to sometimes, and sometimes not get around to do everything.
You mentioned a little bit about your process as a musician. This is something that we're always very interested at Good Because Danish, to hear how a song comes to life. Can you tell me a little bit more how you created the songs on your EP?
I think actually almost every song came to life in a different way. For instance, Raining Moons on Come Move in Another Dimension was an image that I got from a friend, and I started visualizing how that will look on stage with visuals and what kind of sensation it will feel like in your body. So I had this almost a scenery totally described for me. I had this picture of a couple sitting on a very small planet. And from that imagery and what I wanted to do on stage, I created Raining Moons. And then there are songs like Tiger. It's a very personal song for me. It's about feeling very inadequate as a human being and fighting with some bigger things. And when I started letting go of that, I could create this number, and I wanted it to be organic and atmospheric. So I worked on it for a really long time, just sitting. I had one drone, one note I played for a long time, just jamming over the whole song. And then when I had almost the entire song, I started putting chords on it. But that song just came to me. I had to run out during a concert. I was on my school and I ran out to the toilet, and then I recorded the first verse. It just came to me, and I didn't change anything. So sometimes it comes in these blurbs and it just has to get out. And then I make myself available for inspiration, which means just sitting by the piano for hours sometimes and letting it come to you. And sometimes it's this imagery that I go and develop in my head, and that becomes a song.
What are your plans for the future?
Well, both EPs are out now, and I'm working on my debut album at the moment, and I think that will take at least 1.5 years before it's done. But I've created a lot of the songs that I want to go to that album. And then hopefully, we will get to play release concerts in, I think it will be summertime, early summer, to wrap this up. Because just as much as I thought this would be a part 1 and a part 2, I also imagined it coming together in a concert. So there's this third leg that we haven't even spoken of, which is the live element, which is actually what is closest to my heart, because that's where I really get to combine the visual parts and all the exciting stuff that I've been working on, and also combining the string versions with the band. So I cross my fingers and my heart so much that we get to play this concert, because I've been preparing it for a year more, actually. And when that's over, I hope we will get to play that constellation maybe sometimes when people can afford it. Like we could come out with this full package of part 1 and part 2 together. And then during next year, perhaps some new singles or live sessions will drop, teasing a bit from the upcoming album.
In these circumstances that of a lockdown, it's also, I think, additionally tough for DIY artists because you get your momentum by playing live shows and connecting with your audience. All the streaming services, algorithms, and online environment is especially tough, I think, for small indie musicians. Do you ever wonder, is there a way for the industry to somewhat help more the indie artists?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways you could actually be more aware of DIY artists. One is, I don't know how, yeah, I know a little bit about how it works in Germany and Scandinavia in general. But for me, it would be really lovely if we always knew that, for instance, there would be, we called it a tarif, a set amount that we could get every time we play. Because I've been supporting some pretty big artists now, and we were actually almost not paid for that. And of course, it's a big opportunity, and we would never pass it. And it has been some amazing experiences, but it's really hard to make the wheels go around when you earn perhaps 20 euro on a job. So for me, there's like this structure that says that the 1% that actually get through and get to the mainstream, they can live from it, and they earn a lot of money, and the record labels earn a lot of money. So it would be nice to see this kind of more flat structure where more money would go to the bottom, because we're really efficient with the money that we have. And then of course there's also like, what can every man and woman do? I think most people should think about how they pay for their streaming, for instance. People are freeloaders who just I'll take the ads between the songs. And if you listen to maybe 2 hours of music every day, maybe you should consider paying, because in the end, there will be more money for the artists when you stream them. And the best is, of course, always to buy the vinyls, CDs, the merch that the artists have. It's a really, really efficient way of supporting their art.
You released an EP now, and I think it's lovely because I'm kind of sick and tired of getting single after single after single. And then when you get to the album, you basically heard almost like 80% of the music. But I get it that that's what the streaming services require, because you need to be on the radar, you need to be on playlists and so on. So it's a very, very big topic. I'm always curious to hear how people who are their own bosses like you look at these issues, because I think it's also very important to understand that this is a very special area and you can't approach it as just another project that should deliver on deadline.
It's a really tough question. I think in the beginning, I thought that, releasing single after single was a lot of work. It is really a lot of work, because every time you set up a single, it's massive PR you have to do. It's around 150 mails for me every time I send out one EP or one single. And then you have to do both the Danish and the English version of your PR text. And then there's a lot of money who goes into pitching. So it's a really, really expensive, both like time-wise and also money-wise, very heavy thing to release singles. But for the moment, it's so important with the flow of energy that we have in our music system, that you're always present. And this is one of the most efficient ways of being always present, because if you made an entire album and you drop it one by one, it could take 2 years instead of, that 1 week where you're like lining yourself up to drop an EP or an album. So in that way, it's a really nice way of staying present. And for me, it's also a good energy to keep myself up on these like dates and working towards them. But I must also say it's really tiring, and also because it is so hard to get heard. And it's so hard to get heard to the extent where you start getting interesting to other people than just your small group of friends and family and people who went to your concerts. So I think it has this two-sided thing where it's nice with the singles for you to stay present in the market, but it's also a really heavy load as a musician. And I also think that maybe we worry too much about it. most DIY musicians, because in the end, the place we earn our most money, or where we see the value most, is live. It's on the stage, present with our audience. That's where we can make a difference, and that's where we can earn real money. I have like 40,000 streams on my album, and I'm gonna earn like, I don't know, maybe 10 euro on it. It's not, and I spent 200 euro releasing it. So I will never, get to earn the money that I actually put in just pitching and releasing the music, which is crazy because it also costs a lot of money just to make the music. So that's just one part of the whole thing. I don't know if that answers your question in any kind of way. It's just it's a complex place to be as a DIY artist.
It's also a very brave move to decide on doing something this complex and complicated in many ways on your own. So, but we kind of looped back into to the topic of the two sides of everything, basically. Yeah. So there is this way of thinking into the music as well as like your thinking, I think. So yeah. It's just proved that it is a very honest music, I think.
Okay. Yeah, it's a red line. It's the only thing that ties it all together. It's the dualities for me.
Thank you for listening to the Good Because Danish interview with MoonBee. You can find her music on streaming platforms and follow MoonBee on social media. Good Because Danish is sharing the best Danish music since 2011. If you like what we are doing, please consider a donation to support us. You can do it via PayPal or Patreon. To know more about the Danish music scene, follow our website, goodbecausedanish.com, and find us on social media.